compare Audi Mag Ride with your Dynamic Plus springs versus a full top-of-the-line coilover. Well, okay, that's a broad question, and I can only really, speak in generalizations, which are not always applicable to your specific scenario. But generally, I'll say that like a top-line coilover, I think a KW Variant 3 could classify as that. KW has some Club Sport and more expensive higher end options. And there's also stuff like Öhlins out there where you can get for Audi applications, but not always. And then there's customized stuff like with JRZ and things like that. So the advantage of upgrading your springs and shocks is to get a more optimized spring and shock package that work better, that have more travel, that have better, higher quality damping than the factory shocks. There's certainly an opportunity to lower the car. Coilovers give you the option to corner balance or to fine tune the fender gap of all your wheels and tires. And then you have an adjustability factor with a high-end coilover. So you can change out springs, you can change your spring rates, you can change the length of your springs, and then on the valving standpoint, you can adjust rebound and damping. So rebound and damping are the shock's ability to resist compression and resist expansion of the shock shaft in the valve body. The problem with high-end coilovers is they're very expensive. For a true high-end coilover kit for an Audi, you're looking at least $3,000, as much as $6,000. We used to sell some Öhlins kits that were almost $10,000. Now they're very good. Don't get me wrong. If you have a race car and a race setup, that's the only way to go because it allows you to adjust and fine-tune the weight balance of the car, the height of the car, the amount of damping that the car needs. But the problem with these high-end coilovers is it sort of throws you into the sea of options. So unless you can go to a track, unless you can do testing, unless you have an engineer who can help you set up this car, you are now kind of lost in literally an infinite number of options on how to tune your suspension. And you've also spent a shit ton of money, and you need to do testing. Now, if you have a race car, perfect.
That's okay.
That's what you want.
Right.
And that's what we used to do when we went to Time Attack and raced in Grand Am and SCCA. We would go to test days, and we would spend $10,000 on one outing to the track so we could set up the suspension. And that included, one or two engineers, one or two techs who can actually do the wrenching. That included, extensive corner balancing, weight scales, alignment equipment, and then timing equipment, also data logging equipment so that we can actually see how fast is the car going from various corner to corners. Can we track the speed of a car through sections on the course, and then the overall lap times? We're taking tire temps. So there's $100 tire temp tool. So this is all the stuff that you really should do if you want to spend $6,000 on a coilover kit. And when a KW Variant 3 shows up, it's not set for your car. It's set in the middle. And if you just put that on your car and you go, it's probably going to handle worse than stock suspension. So all that to say, if you don't have the ability or the desire to do all of what I just described, then you buy our Dynamic Plus springs for around $300. And we've done all that testing. We've done all that work to optimize the one variable with the spring to the factory shock or damper. What we've seen is you could take a stock car and put our catalog on it. So that's actually what we did for the one of the last European car Grand Prix. We went to a tuner competition and competed against about 6 or 7 other tuners, and they had all kinds of KWs and custom coilovers and stuff on their Audis. And we showed up with an S3 with everything from our catalog, including our Dynamic Plus springs. And we ran the fastest time on the road course with the same spec tire that everybody was running. But with our springs and the factory MagRide S3 shocks, we were able to go faster than anyone else on that track. So if you're looking for a high level of performance and livable on the street, and you don't have the ability to test or set up your suspension, then the $330 that you spend on our springs is a great option. So sorry, really long-winded answer, but just to kind of give you an idea that there's sort of this idea of panacea with some of these other options, but there's no magic in a coilover. There's how it's set up and how it's implemented on your car. And if you can't optimize that, then you're not going to get the best result.
And that follows our entire product philosophy. You know, we create our entire Dynamic Plus line to be the best set, you know, option for your all-around out here Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Our Dynamic Plus camber plates dial it in perfectly to that camber that we have found to be the best amount for both daily drivability and on-track performance.
Yeah,
That's
true. We moved that around tenths of a degree to get just the right. So you don't have to. So you just slap them in, and you have that optimal amount of camber without having to go to a track and do those test laps.
And that'll get you 9/10 of the way there. If you're trying to chase that 10/10, then the full adjustability like Javad's talking about with some of these race coilovers is what you're looking for. But 9 times out of 10, this will get you everything you need.
Yeah. And I'll add one last thing is most spring manufacturers, most companies that sell springs aren't doing that. So they're basically lowering the car a certain amount, and it's unclear what they're doing with spring rates. And they don't offer a spring for the RS3 and the A3 S3, you know. They don't offer a different spring for the S4 than the A4. So that's your first sign that they haven't done that optimization, because they're offering the same spring for different cars with different engines, with different shocks and dampers.
Yep.
And so, you know, that's why our simple spring can work as well as a high-end coilover, because we've taken that into account for each car. I'm sure the more we talk about this, the more other companies will catch on to what we've done. It's not rocket science. It's a very simple concept. The S4 needs a different spring than the A4. That's not a complicated concept, but apparently, you know, you have to do twice as much work. You have to produce twice as many different springs. And, you know, the bigger companies don't want to do that. So as long as your car is lowered X amount, that's kind of the only standard that they're going for. But we're also delivering the performance as well. So
absolutely.
All right. Thank you for that great question. Give me a chance to talk about something that I enjoy talking about.